Welcome to Keto Life Support, where we make your keto life sustainable, fun, and low stress. I'm Kim Howerton, and I'll be coming to you weekly with some of my keto besties to bring you the practical, real-world keto advice that you need. Quick disclaimer, I am not a doctor, and even if we do have a doctor in the house from time to time, he or she is not your doctor, and nothing we say on this show should be taken as medical advice. Always check in with a trusted medical professional about your own personal medical concerns.
Hello, this is Kim Howerton, and this is Keto Life Support, and this is episode 133. I'm recording this episode right as we're entering into November of 2022 to be exact, which is crazy. It's like 11 and 12, that's it. And then it's 2023. Anyway, but that's not actually what it's about. It's not about how fast time goes, but that's crazy. And I just always think that. And I know that makes me sound old, but that's just the way it goes. All right. So what is this episode about? This episode is about the fact that we are entering into what people refer to as the holiday season. Canadians, I know your holiday season actually started like a month ago when you had your Thanksgiving. I apologize. We are by nature a little bit egotistical here in the US, and we forgot or something, sort of. Apologies. Sorry. All right. But we still are entering into the sort of intensely holiday season-y period. We've just exited the October Pumpkin Fest. And so it starts with like little drip, drop, pumpkin spice season opens. It's like when you go to a show and like the drum starts beating, it's like a da-da-da-da-da-da. It's just like, it's like the build up before you get to the thing. And now I feel like the floodgates are going to open. It's not just pumpkin. We got pumpkin, we got peppermint, we got all the flavor seasons. And what am I talking about? Well, if you know food, if you love food, you know this is a challenging food season because a lot of our memories this time of year are really wrapped up in food. And there are among us people that embrace that. And then there are other people that really struggle. And so I just want to just put it out there that whichever your approach is, will probably do best knowing what your approach will be. Actually, one of the main sort of top 5 things that successful long-term weight loss keeper offers do, there needs to be a better term for that. Maintainers? I don't know what the term is. People who lose a lot of weight and keep it off. People who are successful at doing that. One of the things that they repeatedly do is plan for special events. And since we're kind of entering into this 2-ish month season where people often feel like they get sucked into not just an event like Christmas a day, they kind of have a season of it. And there are many ways to approach this, but the most important thing is that you know what your approach will be. So I wanted to just do a short podcast just raising this issue that if you have not yet determined how you'll be spending the next 2 months in terms of your food choices, now is a time to put that plan in action. Now, a lot of you will just say, well, I'm going to be keto. I'm going to keep it keto. I'm going to stay within these food parameters. And that feels like good enough for you. Spot on, excellent, go forth. Other people will say in previous years when I just said, well, I'm just going to keep it keto, it still felt a little out of control. There were a lot of keto treats. There were a lot of keto sweets. There were a lot of just unregulated eating periods. And it didn't feel good in hindsight. It always feels good in the moment, almost always anyway, but it often leaves an aftermath you don't want to deal with. And so if that was your experience, you probably want to have a different plan this year. I'm not saying there's one right way to do any of this, but at this point, I hope you know yourself well enough. And if you don't know yourself well enough, to ask the kinds of questions to help you get to know yourself better around what the right approach would be for you this year. I'll tell you what I'm planning. So I'll first say with a lot of my clients, I actually suggest that they go into very intentional maintenance for November, December. It's not necessarily the best time for a concentrated fat loss period. That's not to say that it can't be good for you, or if that's just the way it has to be in your life, that you can't make it work. But when you're planning your year out, I would tend to suggest for most people that November, December might not be the best time for fat loss, unless you're contrary and stubborn, and then it might be a great time because you like to go against the grain. Who am I to stop you if it works for you? But for most of my clients, they find they have a much happier and easier holiday season if they're in some degree of maintenance. What is maintenance? We've talked about it before. It simply means you're not really trying to gain or lose weight, you're simply trying to maintain your weight and maintain healthy habits. You have a conscious approach to eating. You know what your maintenance level of food intake should look like. It's not a mystery. If you've been doing this for a while, you know about what range of energy you need. And so that tends to leave most people a little room for some treats, a little room for a party, a little flexibility. But it's also a time to be conscious and aware, and it's not a food free for all. Other people say, I'm going to treat this time of year just like any other time of year, and I'm just going to eat average, normal things. Like the carnivores among us, probably aren't having a lot of the holiday treats. It's just a little challenging to do in the carnivore space, and that is totally sane as well. But I told you I was going to tell you what I do, which is it varies from year to year. Some years I'm like, hey, 2 months maintenance season, maybe 3 months, depending on what's going on with me. Right now in this season, I'm doing like just what I would call a very mild cut. So I'm not like, it's not taking it down to the basics. It's just a slight anti-surplus. It's just a slight deficit. And so it's just the idea is like maybe like 2 to 3 pounds a month of weight loss, not a huge heap and helping, which allows me to kind of not feel like a crazy person, not feel overly restricted, include a few weekly, indulgences, but at the same time, still be inching towards a goal. But I decided what I'm going to do this year is I'm going to keep that up through the holiday season. However, for a week, for 7 days around Thanksgiving, because there's always some leftovers and things like that. And for a week around Christmas, I'm going to come up to maintenance. And so that makes things more flexible. So, you decide what your plan is for the season. Then it comes down to like, how do you execute that plan, right? This is true of any phase. You're like, okay, I have my plan, like the spreadsheet, the numbers, the whatever, however you do that. And if you're not a tracker or planner that way, you still have like the foods you eat, you have an overall plan. And then there's the how to, right? How am I going to execute that plan? What are the habits? What are the details? What do I need to change? Right? If you're like, hey, I'm going to eat this many calories or these macros, however you like to organize that, then, you actually still have to cook the food, right? So it's not just the decision. Once the decision is made, then you have to make the plan based on the decision or the goal, right? The decision, what the goal is, and then the plan. One of the things that I've realized over the years is, several holiday seasons, I went all out and cooked all the things, the stuffing and the keto stuffing, and the mashed potatoes, and the, on and on and on, and this whole like smorgasbord, because it's kind of fun. And then there were days when I'd be like, oh my God, my fridge is so full of food. And so in more recent years, I have thought about more incorporating, one or two of those foods that I like through the season. So maybe I make mashed potatoes very often with cauliflower. So maybe I'll make them, but maybe I won't make them the week of Christmas because I really want to make my mashed or my pureed kabocha squash. I think that tastes great with the turkey, so I'm going to do that. So I'm not going to do the cauliflower mash and the potato, right, and the kabocha squash. Now, if I were having a big party and feeding a lot of people, that would be different. But just, what I tend to do is my partner and I, we have a Thanksgiving together, kind of a nice, quiet evening. It's been really nice, but we like all the stuff, so we make a big meal. But since it's just he and I eating our dinner and leftovers, we love leftovers. So that's all great. Having like an enormous array of foods, it doesn't really serve me. So I pick, 3 or 4 favorites. Maybe there'll be the turkey, there'll be the squash. I'll make some keto gravy, and, maybe there'll be like some type of fun vegetable, right? So it's not like out of, I like cranberry. I'll do that too. But, it's not like I don't have like a groaning plate full of 20,000 things. I've learned keeping it simple works better for me. But like I said, because I like a lot of the different things, I might incorporate some of those holiday things through the season. And that's why I like thinking of it as, a season rather than just one meal. Now, for other people, so that's how I do it. And then for Christmas, I have a big Christmas thing with the family, but we also make stuff at home. And so I have leftovers at my house. Tends to be the big family thing. There are no leftovers. So I make the Christmas dinner too, have the leftovers from that. And we make a turkey both times. This year, we're thinking of spatchcocking the turkey. I usually cook the turkey upside down. It's the best method for cooking a whole turkey, but this year we might try the spatchcocking. If you don't know why you want to cook your turkey upside down, I do talk about that in my cookbook, Our Holiday Table, that I wrote with Nisha Berry. Basically, short answer, all the fat is in the dark meat, which is on the bottom, which people usually put on the bottom. You want that to be on the top so that as the turkey cooks, all the fat drips through the breast and the breast dries out faster. So by cooking the breast facing down, it protects it and it cooks it slower so you don't end up with dry white meat. And it's perfection for the most part, except for the fact that your turkey looks strange because it's upside down and the underside is not as pretty. But I care more that it's tasty. Anyway, I digress. So my plan this year is I'm doing the 2-month kind of season. I'm doing just a very subtle cut, not a full, pound a week, even just lower than that, slow and steady, feeling not at all deprived by that. And then incorporating some of those different holiday flavors throughout. Like I got some, peppermint coffee and some Nut Pods peppermint creamer. And I'm kind of like doing little indulgences, but that aren't like break the bank caloric or carb indulgences, just ways to feel like I'm celebrating the food because I love that. It makes me happy. I'm not 100% abstainer. I'm a selective one. And so that's my plan this season. So back to you. I would like you to sit down or, think about how are you going to handle the next 2 months? What's your plan going to be? What will work best for your life, for your family, for your habits, for your holiday traditions? How are you going to make all of that work for you? And then if you need help putting the plan into action, you let me know. I have my Tuesday Night Live. If everybody doesn't know about this, it's on YouTube, also on Facebook. You can join 5 p.m. on Tuesday evenings, 5 p.m. California time. So that's West Coast time. And just come on and ask questions and I'll be happy to answer them. And if you need help putting together your plan, you let me know. All right, everybody. I will be coming to you with some holiday little tips and tricks throughout this season as well. So you got your turkey tip today. Hopefully this is a little idea sparker in your brain for what you're going to see, what you're going to accomplish, what you're going to feel when January rolls around. And I want you to feel good about how you executed on your holiday plans. All right, guys, talk to you soon.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Keto Life Support. Want more information? Want show notes? Want to suggest a topic? Just head over to ketolifesupport.com. That's where all that kind of thing can go on. By the way, I have a request. If you could go to your podcast host and hit subscribe, we would really, really appreciate it. And what would be even more awesome is if you could write a review. And what would be even more awesome than that is if you could write like a really flattering review. Just asking, you do you. All right. So thanks so much for joining us. I'm thrilled that you're part of the Keto fam. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.